Welcome, everyone. My name is Lisanne O'Loughlin, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Dig It Kids' first online session. I'm glad to know that there's many of our friends joining us from here in Ireland, all over actually, and from many places from around the world. How wonderful is that you've joined us? Today's session is all about bones. So we all have them, and we're all going to learn some really interesting things. Let me introduce you to Dr. Stephen Mandel. Stephen has some real treats for you and some terrible dad jokes when he's going to tell us about bones and the really fascinating stories that they can tell. And later, Dr. Francesca Cadedu is going to lead us in a wonderful craft where we're going to make skeletons outside and on the paper. So we're all going to be a part of that, and we're going to enjoy our 1-hour session together today. Handing it right over to Stephen now.
Well, thanks, Lisanne. Hi, guys. I am going to talk to you a little bit about bones. They're really important. Could you imagine our life without bones? We'd be all jelly and wobbly and stuff. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them. I'm going to share my screen to do so. So, bones are not just important to us, they're important to archaeologists. And one of the most important things we can find on an archaeology site are remains. Bones from people who died a long time ago, or bones from the animals that lived at the same time. And we study all about them, and it's really important to understand which part of the body it came from, what type of animal it was from, because it can just tell us so much information about the past. So did you know that we evolved from apes? You probably knew that already. And our closest relative in the animal kingdom is the chimpanzee. We're actually really, really closely related to chimpanzees. And you can sort of see why when you see this image. But as archaeologists, when we're digging up a site, of course we don't find all of the bodies and everything. We find the skeletons. But as you can see from this, you can actually tell an awful lot about what the person would look like from their skeletons. You can tell which skeleton belongs to which animal. If I jumble them up, you'd be able to figure it out. So we're going to play a little game here, and we're going to compare two different skeletons. We're going to try and spot the difference between an ape skeleton and a human skeleton. So I'm going to give you a minute or two, and you can pause the video if you need more time to try and think of some differences between these. So here we go. Probably the most obvious difference is the height. Human beings are much taller than apes. Rib cages are actually wider in apes. Their rib cages are different shape. They're more like a triangle to our rib cage. If you look at the rib cages between an ape, particularly down at the base there, they're very broad. Hands and feet. Apes have much bigger hands and feet than we do. And they also have much longer arms and shorter legs. You see the way their arms are much longer? That's because a lot of apes spend an awful lot of time in the trees, and they need their arms to move around the trees, whereas we don't do that so much. I like climbing in trees, but I don't spend my whole life there. Pelvises are completely different. See how big the ape's pelvis is compared to a human pelvis? And then we have our skulls. Probably the reason why we've evolved so much from our time as apes is our skulls and our brains have evolved hugely. So you can see this gap there. See that part there? That part of our body, our forehead is much, much bigger, and we have much larger brains. So I'm going to go back into an archaeological site, one of my favorite archaeology sites in Ireland. Some of you may have been there. And this is called Pool na Brone, and it's in the Burren in County Clare, and it was excavated by a friend of mine, Dr. Anne Lynch. And I want you to have a guess as to what was it for. So do you think it was a giant's bed a graveyard or just some art. You can see what size it is. There's someone standing in there behind it. It's pretty big. Did you say graveyard? Perfect. That's exactly what it is. It's actually a place where people were buried. And in archaeology, we have a really big term for it. It's called a megalithic tomb. But when you break it down, it's not so difficult to understand. Mega means big. Lithic just means it's made of stone. You can see it's made of stone. It's made of limestone. And tomb is another word for a graveyard. But this one is 5,800 years old. Can you imagine 5,800 years old? It's ancient. But what it was essentially a graveyard for, Anne believes it was for a graveyard for a sort of family group. But it's like a modern day graveyard today. And in Anne's book that she wrote about this, she has some lovely drawings. And this is a drawing of what we think it might have looked like when someone was being buried. So this is somebody being buried inside the tomb there. And she found lots and lots of bits and pieces of human remains. The most exciting one, I think, was actually this bone here. And this is part of your pelvis. You can actually feel it. If you scrunch around, you can feel that part of you. But when she x-rayed it, she took an x-ray of it. And can you see? Sorry. Can you see this part here? That little white dot? It turns out, you can just see it there. That is the tip of a flint arrowhead. This person got shot in the butt, which I cannot imagine would have been too pleasant an experience. But this other bone was found on the site that wasn't human bone. And it was found just here. Around, this is it here. This is what was found. And it's carved out of a piece of bone, beautifully carved. So bone just wasn't about dead animals and things like that. Sometimes people use bone to make jewelry. So here's another bone. And I want you to try and guess. This is a bone from later on. It's not from the site of Pool na Brone. It's from later on in Irish history. But what part of the body does this bone come from? Do you think it comes from the jaw, from the back, or from the bum of some animal? And what animal do you think it came from? Okay, well, if you said the jaw, you're correct. Of course it's the jaw. You can see the teeth. And then if you said a frog, then I don't know how many frogs you've seen that look like that. Of course it's from a horse, and you can see it has such a long face. And just to be clear, that's the horse, and that's not a horse, okay? Just so you know that. I'm now going to bring you to another site that was studied by a friend of mine, and her name is Dr. Marion Dowd, and this is Alison Gwendolyn Cave. That's Marion inside the cave. And there were bones found inside this cave, and they looked like they were really ancient. And Marion studied them, and the most interesting bone that was found was this bone here. Really, really interesting bone. So what part of the body do you think this bone comes from? From the skull, from the knee, or from the chest? And what animal do you think it came from? Do you think it came from a horse, a T-Rex, or a bear? Well, here's the answers. It came from the knee. So you can actually feel that bone on your knee. It's the roundy bone at the top, at the front of your knee. It's called the patella. And what animal did it come from? Did it come from a horse, a T-Rex, or a bear? Please don't tell me you said a T-Rex, even though that's the coolest answer. The answer is actually a bear. And it's actually the knee bone of the right back leg, of a bear. But what else was really interesting about this is that has some scratchings on it. Can you see them? What do you think made those scratches? Do you think it was another animal chewing on it? Or do you think someone used a fork Or maybe was it a flint knife? Why did they do it? Was it to cut the tendons? Was it just to be mean? Were they torturing the bear? Or was it to draw a picture? Well, here's the answers. It was done with a flint knife. That means it was done by a human being. And the really cool thing about this is when they got a date, a radiocarbon date for this bone, it found out it was over 12,000 years old. Really, 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 really old, that bear was in that cave. And they also realized that the flint knife cut the bear just after it died, so it wasn't done hundreds of years later. But the reason they did it was actually to cut off the tendons. Now, this is somewhere you have to go and feel around in your leg. So this is the knee, and what we've got on your knee is there are tendons, and the tendons attach the muscles to the bone, and that's what allows you to move. So they were cutting the tendons off the bear. Why were they doing that? Do you think they like to chew on them? Or do you think they like to throw it at people? That's sort of like a weird joke. Or do you think they are making rope? I've never tried chewing tendon, by the way. The answer is to make rope. And this is a flint arrowhead and a flint arrow. And they used sinew, the tendons of the bear or of an animal, as string to wrap the arrowhead onto the stick. Isn't that really cool? So I hope you learned lots and lots about bones and how important they are to archaeologists. And I am now going to hand you over to Francesca, who's going to lead our making our own skeletons. So talk to you soon.
Guys, now it's my turn. So I'm in charge of the craft presentation, and I'll share very quickly my screen with you so you can see what we are going to do very quickly. But don't start working yet, because we will do it together. So let's start. I'll share my screen with you. Steve told you a lot about bones, so many interesting stuff, and I bet you got all the answers right. I'm pretty sure about this. So now we start with our craft activity, but before that, an important thing. Did you wash your hands? Yes, exactly like this. And remember, 20 seconds, just about the happy birthday song. Or if you remember if you know that song, we will rock you. If you repeat it 3 times, that's about 20 seconds. And do all the movements right, okay? Like this, like this, like this. Ready? Now we are really ready. So let's gather all the material that we need to make our pasta skeleton. First thing first, we need some pasta, dry pasta to be clear. And of course, go crazy with the types. You can use whatever types you want, whatever shape you want, but ask your parents which one you need to use, because you know, some pasta is better with tomato sauce than with glue. Also, we need some rice, raw of course, and let's not eat it, it's better cooked for sure. Some bits and bobs of crafty stuff, if you have it at home. We can add, you know, some fancy and funny details to our pasta skeletons after if we want. Scissors, in case we need to cut the pasta. A sheet of colored paper, of course dark would be better because pasta is light in color, so it would pop out better, but whatever sheet you have is fine. PVA glue or Prit glue is perfect, so we can stick our pasta to the paper. Some small plate to put the glue on, or even one of those plastic yogurt container would be perfect. And some glue, brush, or lollipop stick, or craft knife, whatever you have to apply the glue on the pasta or on the sheet. We have everything we need. So, are we ready? Are we steady? Then let's make our pasta skeleton. So, don't start working yet, because we will do it together. with Steve and me describing you the steps. But for now, I'll show you the steps on the way so you already know the whole thing. These are the two pasta skeletons that I and Steve made. And of course, you can see they are completely different. You can do your pasta skeleton however you want. It's just art and it's creativity. So just go crazy and do your own pasta skeleton. So we will start with the skull, of course, at the top of the body. Then we will proceed with the spine. You can see it in the video, which parts are the shoulder blades, the ribs, pelvis. It's just a fancy word for hip bone, just so you know. And then we can start with arms that are formed by humerus, radius, and ulna. The legs that are formed by femur, patella, or kneecap. Now we know all about kneecap, of course. Tibia and fibula. And then we will end with hands and feet, of course. So now we are really ready to start. I will pass the screen to Steve that will do the pasta skeleton with you, and I will tell you what to do. Okay? Ready to craft? Let's go. Steve, your
Yes.
turn.
I like your Italian sense of humor. You passed the screen to me. I'm so funny. I am going to use a different camera. So this is me. And now, through the magic of technology, I am going to show you an X-ray image of me so you can see what my bones look like inside. You ready? Keep watching. There, that's what I look like inside. So this is the pasta skeleton I made. Ooh. Now Francesca's going to do the talking and I'm going to make it as we go, okay? So I'll try and keep up with Francesca. Okay, Francesca?
Okay, so of course, let's start first thing first at the top with the skull. So the skull is just a box for the brain, right? So let's try to make a box with the shape of pasta you think is better. If Steve is using
Right at the top of the paper.
right at the top of the paper. So put some glue either on the pasta or on the sheet of paper. That depends on whatever is easier for you guys. And create just a little box shape with a penne or maybe some cut spaghetti.
Just with 3 pieces, don't make the whole box.
No, exactly. Don't do the bottom because the bottom will be the space for the neck
So just
and
3.
the shoulder blades, okay? So then we need to do the spine. The spine is a very important part of the body. So it's the central part of bones that let your body stand still, basically. So do it with fusilli maybe, because you know, fusilli is the best shape. Yes, the spiraloid ones, because the spine is very flexible. Just use 3 maybe and put them in the center of the sheet, exactly, just under the,
Like that?
exactly, just under the skull.
That's
Maybe
sort of like
3,
my neck.
3 will be fine. I mean, for Steve, 3 are fine. He's very tall. And I'm pretty sure like 3 or 2.5 will be perfect. Yes, exactly. And spine is very flexible and it's formed by 33 vertebrae. Did you know that? So after the spine, we will do the shoulder blade. So the part that connects your neck to the arms, and use 2 penne because we have 2, right? Like that, exactly, between the spine and the skull. Yes, that's perfect. And then we are going to do our ribs. So we can use spaghetti, you know why, and you have to cut them, of course. Spaghetti is too long. No one has ribs that long.
I think it's easier to break them.
Yeah, exactly. Just break them in very short, like that, exactly. And
how many are there?
there are 12 pairs of ribs in our body. Of course, you don't have to do all of them, but of course, if you want, just make them 12. 12 pairs, remember, so 24 pieces. And spaghetti is perfect because the ribs are flat, thin bones. So the spaghetti represent them very well.
Okay, I think I'm going to put the glue on where the ribs are going to go.
That is way, way easier because spaghetti are so thin and it's very difficult to get the glue in there.
And this will dry afterwards.
Don't worry, exactly. It will disappear and the spaghetti will stick very well.
Yeah.
So
I didn't have a brush, so I'm using my fingers.
Yeah, but guys, if you have it, use a brush. It would be way, way easier than to clean your hands. And you know that the ribs form the rib cage, of course, and they protect so many important parts of our body, like the lungs, for example. And to make space for the lungs, you know that the rib cage expands when we breathe 3 to 5 centimeters. I think it's amazing. I didn't know that actually before this. And I think it's great that bones that are so hard are also so flexible.
There's so many of them.
There are, 24.
As archaeologists, it's interesting. We don't always find all the bones because when a body's been buried there for hundreds and thousands of years, bits of it get lost. So sometimes we might only find a part of it. And particularly the spine is made up of lots and lots. How many? 33 little bones?
33.
Once all our flesh and everything is gone, those bones sort of get dispersed. And wait until we get to the fingers.
Cool. Bones are really cool. I like pasta bones.
Well,
So we found some really cool skeletons when we've been doing excavations. And one of the coolest skeletons we found,
oh yeah,
it was a normal skeleton. All the parts were there, except in their teeth, there was a perfect circle in their.
hold on a second, Steve. We can't. Hold on. We can't see you. Can you?
Oh, sorry. That is me.
Is it X-ray?
I'm speaking now. Okay, I'll switch to me. So we found this skeleton and it had a perfect circle. I'm looking for something I can show in its teeth like that. So part of the top was missing and part of the bottom teeth were missing. A perfect circle, maybe the size of a 1 cent piece. And it was really interesting because the site we were digging was really, really old, before there was tobacco, before there was people smoked. But yet there was this skeleton there, and we knew that skeleton must have been there much later because it was from smoking a pipe. So in the old days, they used to make pipes out of clay. And the pipes are very, very hard and they used to get very hot. So people used to put the pipe in their mouth and they couldn't put their lips on it because their lips would get burnt. They'd hold it in their teeth and then it would burn their fingers. So they constantly roll it like this, like this. And because the pipe was hard, it wore down their teeth. So I'm old enough to remember going to a pub in the west of Ireland, and there were still old men smoking these pipes, but they used to smoke these pipes hundreds of years ago, and they smoked them every day. And after maybe 10 years, there would be a perfect hole from the pipe in their teeth. So when this person died, we knew that must have been a pipe smoker. So well done, you guys.
The skeleton that you think was a swordsman.
Oh, that guy was really cool. So there was one part of it, there were two interesting parts. One was his skull, and his skull was a normal skull, but it had a big dent in it, and it had a couple other bashes in it. But what was interesting about it is you could see that the bones had started to heal. So this person got bashed across the head a couple of times, really hard, but it hadn't killed him. He'd recovered. His bones started to grow again. But then there was one huge big cut on the side of its head that definitely killed him. So he said, my God, this guy was in a lot of fights. But then when we found his shoulder, which we've done the shoulder blade here, his shoulder and his arm had extra, remember we talked about the tendons? The tendons were what joined the muscle to the bone. Well, he had extra tendons on. He had marks where there were extra tendons. So his body must have had so much muscles that it needed to grow extra tendons to keep all its muscles on. So this guy had, just on his right arm, was really, really strong. So he held a sword in his right hand. He was right-handed, exactly. He was a swordsman.
Yeah.
And the swordsman, from the time they were like 6 or 7 years old, they would have been decided they were a swordsman, and they would have been practicing first of all with wooden swords. But when they were got old enough, and if they were good enough, they'd be given a sword, and that sword would be so heavy they would just have muscles from fighting all their lives. But this guy wasn't a very good swordsman. He got hit over the head 5 times. 5 times. So he wasn't very good at defending himself.
So now is the turn of the hip bone or pelvis. And Steve is using farfalle, could be, or the bow tie, it depends on how you want to call it.
You did something differently, didn't you?
Yes, I did it differently actually, because I didn't have any farfalle at home, go figure. And I used some penne to do kind of a diamond shape. But the important thing is that Steve is using farfalle because the pelvis or hip bone is symmetrical. So it has kind of 2 wings. So the farfalle would be the best way. But again, I did a diamond with penne that it kind of looked like our hip bone. And it connects our upper part of the body to the legs.
So God,
now
you don't have that particular type of pasta, anything that you like, okay? Because this is art, right?
Exactly.
Mine's definitely artistic. Look at that. Beautiful.
It is. So now we can do the arms and legs. What do you think, guys?
Okay, which first?
So we will start with the arms. We started from the top, so let's start with the arms, and we'll start with the upper part of the arm. We can use a penne to make the femur. That's the name of the bone that we have.
No, it's not. I found this humorous.
Ha 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 ha. Humerus, not femur. Sorry, guys. My bad. That was really, really humorous. And the humerus is the upper part of your arm.
I have to do
and
both
it's
of
also
them.
called, fun fact, it's called funny bone, because when you knocked it, it kind of gives like a tingly sensation. So I don't know why someone found that funny, but it hurts. Anyway, and then after the femur, the forearm, so the lower part of your arm is made by radius and ulna. They are 2 bones. One
I'm
is
going to put
thick.
one of mine waving.
Oh, that's nice. Creativity. See, guys, we will change. You can do one waving and the other one exactly like that. And the other bone is a thin one. It's called ulna, and it's parallel to the radius. So you can put it in line with that, and you can use spaghetti because again, it's very, very thin. This bone is longer and thinner than the other one.
So let's just ask people to hold their arms.
Exactly.
Turn your hand from side to side and see if you can feel your bones moving, your 2 bones in your forearm. They call the part close to your hand a forearm.
You can feel them, and actually, interesting fact, if you turn your hand, the radius, that is the thick one, the big one, moves, but the ulna, that is the thin one, doesn't.
I can feel mine. Can anybody feel their bones moving?
But I don't have 4 arms. I only have 2 arms.
Oh, that was so humorous.
Dad jokes. Yeah.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the party?
I don't know.
Because he had nobody to go with.
Done. Let's move on. Yeah.
That's perfect. So legs are kind of similar to our arms. They are made in almost the same way because on the upper part, we have a very thick bone called the femur, and so we can use penne again. And you know, the femur is the longest, largest, and strongest bone that we have in our body because it's a weight-bearing bone. So all our weight is on our femur, basically. So they have to be super strong. And if you want to know how long is your femur, just do a quarter of your height. And that will be the length of your femur. I found that amazing.
If you want to know how tall you are, measure your femur and multiply by 4.
Exactly. That's another way of looking at it.
Our guy's femurs are pretty small.
In comparison to the shoulder blade, especially, yes. Steve, add another penne.
He won't fit on the table.
Ah, okay, that's fine. So the lower part of the leg, so much like the forearm, is made by 2 bones. So
we need the kneecaps.
Oh, sorry, that's true. We wouldn't be able to flex our legs without the kneecap, so it's important. So let's do the kneecap.
It's quite hard. You sort of need to break a piece of pasta.
Yeah, let's try to break a piece of pasta. Maybe even just a piece of the fusilli, if you have one, or a piece of the penne.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. The fusilli is easier to break.
Fusilli is probably easier to break in some ways.
Show us what you're doing, Steve. Show us the piece of pasta you're breaking.
Oh, I can't. It's broken. It was one of these ones.
Yeah, okay.
I just broke it, but it just broke it. You just need a small bit to stick on.
Very small.
It doesn't matter what.
Patella is, but sorry, the kneecap, another fancy word to say kneecap is patella, comes from the ancient Roman Latin. And it allows the leg to be flexible and to bend way, way more than it should.
My guy just looks like he has tiny legs.
Very tiny, yes, definitely. But let's try to fix that. So the lower part.
Down? Are you guys sitting down? Because if you are, I wonder if you could put your hands for a second on your kneecaps and can you feel your kneecaps? That would be lovely. And they're kind of right at the front of your knee, and they're a little piece of pasta. Is that what they're made of?
Lower legs.
So we were saying the lower part is made of 2 bones. So let's use again some penne or fusilli, some long pasta. For the thick one that is called tibia. And then we have the thin one, exactly like the forearm. And the thin one is called fibula.
So we use spaghetti for the thin.
Spaghetti again, yes, exactly. And these two bones form the calf. Like the other 2 form the forearm. These are the calves. And the tibia is also called shin bone. And it hurts like crazy when it gets knocked. Because you know why? I experienced it so many times, because it doesn't have anything to protect it. So if you can touch your shin, your calf, you can feel actually your shin bone, because there is only skin to protect it. And that's why it hurts so much.
Isn't it cool that this part of our leg and this part of our arm are made of 2 bones, and then the upper part of our leg and the upper part of our arm are made of 1 bone? So our arms and legs are the same.
Yep.
Except we don't have a kneecap we don't have an elbow cap. We just have that really awful end of your funny bone that hurts like hell.
Exactly.
Now, guys, because the good news is there's only 27 bones in each hand and each foot.
Exactly. So hands and feet will be fun to make. 27 bones in your hands. Can you imagine it? Because the fingers, each finger is made of 3 little teeny tiny bones. And
So what I'm doing is I'm going to, if you have your brush, great, but I'm going to put some glue down where the hand will be. I'll do each hand one at a time.
Exactly, because we will use rice this
Yeah.
time, because again, they are teeny, teeny, tiny. So let's
I'm
try
just going to get a little clump of rice like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go, Francesca, you tell them.
No, exactly. I was saying the same. So let's try to put the rice where the hand is. And if you want to do a very detailed job after, if you want to have fun with your skeleton, just try to put in line 3 pieces of rice so you can do all the fingers. Or you can do like this. It looks like a fist.
Listen, I just want to show you this guy. I did this guy really well.
Yep, like that.
Just one
exactly.
hand.
You can do both, and you can do.
So see the way that looks like a hand, but that took me like a half an hour. It was so hard. So I'm just going to pretend my guy dropped a hammer on his hand.
That's perfect. And actually, you can use spaghetti to help you move the little
That's
pieces
a good
of
idea,
rice.
like this. Because the spaghetti is like a craft knife. There you go. So it is possible. I'm going to try with this one.
Let's do the feet. Same thing as the hands. So put some glue at the end of your legs. Not yours, sorry, the pasta skeleton. And put some rice on. Ooh, Steve, great job with the other hand.
Thank you.
And you know that the feet can bear 1.5 times your weight.
Wow.
That's good because I weigh 1.5 times my weight having been inside for 2 weeks.
Very good point. Yep. That's why I cannot feel my bones anymore.
They're in there. Otherwise, you'd be a little bunch of
I would
jelly. You'd look like a jellyfish. Yeah. Yeah. So I think this is looking great, but I really think this guy needs eyes, Steve. And somebody used coffee beans for eyes.
Great idea.
Yeah,
Really great idea. And of course, now that Steve has done with all the bones and you have done your skeleton, you can add your eyes or the nose, or you can have fun like Steve did with something for the mouth.
I was lucky. I happen to have googly eyes.
Exactly. But remember, the mouth is not a bone. And
this is just to make them look funny.
Yes, exactly. It's just to add some details if you want, and if you want to keep have fun with the skeleton,
I used
whatever
a paper
detail
clip.
you want.
I used a paper clip for the mouth.
Aha!
Oh, this one's a sad one.
Oh, you can also use. You know what? You can also use a piece of rice pasta. The ones that you use, the noodles, the ones that you use for stir fry or something.
Oh yeah.
They have that kind of shape. And of course, if you want, guys, we can also write down on our skeleton the names of the bones, so you can always remember them. What do you think, Steve?
Okay, I can do it.
That's awesome. So let's start with the skull.
Okay, I'm gonna write.
Good job. And then we will go to the spine, right?
I'm gonna write it here.
Yes. You can also do the lines, guys. If you don't have the space, draw a line and then you know which bone we are talking about. Perfect. And then the shoulder blades. And then, do you remember we had the ribs?
I'm gonna write that here.
Perfect. And then what we made? The pelvis. Pelvis. Just in case.
Elvis had a pelvis.
Sorry?
Elvis had a pelvis.
Yes. And then we made the arms, and the upper bone is called humerus, right?
Right.
That's a long one.
You found that humorous.
I know, right?
H,
Remember,
U,
funny
M.
bone. And then radius and ulna are the forearm.
Just right.
So the ulna is the thin one and the radius is the thick one. And then we have the femur, it's the upper part of your leg. Yes, good job, Steve. And then do you remember how it's called the kneecap also? Yes, patella, exactly.
How do you spell patella?
P-A-T-E-L-L-A.
2 L's.
That was a great question, Steve. Thank you.
I'm going to write kneecap as well, so I remember.
Yes. And then we had the lower part of the leg, tibia and fibula. Tibia
And which is the big one?
The big one is the tibia. Yes, T-I-B-I-A. And the small one is the fibula. F-I-B-U-L-A.
And now we have to name every single bone in the hands and feet.
No, he's joking. No
I'll
worries.
just say hands.
Just hands and feet will be fine.
The proper name, of course, is phalanges and tarsals and metatarsals.
Dancing phalange.
Dancing phalange.
I'm writing my name up here.
Of course, Steve.
I think that's great fun. Don't forget to send us some pictures, guys. And it's been wonderful hanging out with you, hasn't it?
It was amazing. Thank you all, guys.
Yeah.
So we've come to the end of our session, and I just want to thank you all for joining us today. Wasn't that a fun session? I hope we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.